Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Let me give you a bit of background before diving into the whole mess. I was in 7th grade and my parents had finally decided I was old enough to have my own cell phone. It wasn't anything fancy by today's standards, just an iPhone 4S, but back then it felt like holding a piece of the future in my hands. I'd only had it for about 3 months and was still learning how everything worked. Our middle school was split into 2 buildings and I mostly kept to myself. I wasn't unpopular, but I wasn't exactly Miss Popularity either. I was just there. I made friends easily enough but kept my circle small. That all changed one Friday night. I was sitting on my bed playing a game on my new phone when a text message from an unknown number popped up. The stranger greeted me by name and asked if I was having a good night. I was confused. Who was this? How did they know my name? I didn't respond right away, thinking maybe they'd texted the wrong person. The unknown texter sent another message stating they knew I was reading their texts. Then they threatened that I'd regret it if I didn't answer them. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't normal. The messages got worse. The person claimed they were outside my house right now and threatened to beat me so badly my own mother wouldn't recognize me if I tried to leave. They added that no one messes with their friends and gets away with it. I froze. What was happening? I hadn't done anything to anybody. I was just a quiet kid who minded my own business. For about 30 seconds, I was genuinely scared. Then my brain kicked in. Wait, I just learned about this in computer class. You could look up people's information online sometimes. I copied the phone number and pasted it into Google. Immediately, a Facebook profile popped up. Cybersecurity was practically non-existent back then, and people put their phone numbers right in their public profiles. The number belonged to a girl from my school. I'll call her Karen. I recognized her from the hallways, but we'd never spoken or had any classes together. Why would she be threatening me? I had literally never interacted with her before. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a different number, but one I recognized. It was a girl I'd recently started hanging out with during lunch, Karen's younger sister. Let's call her Little Karen. Little Karen texted me casually, asking what was up and how my night was going. Suddenly, everything clicked. I'd given Little Karen my phone number earlier that week when we started hanging out. Now she and her sister were trying to scare me for fun. I decided to play along. Actually, not just play along, I'd teach them a lesson. I messaged back apologizing that I couldn't really talk right now because I was on the other line with the police. Little Karen immediately questioned why I was talking to the police. I explained that someone had been sending me threatening messages saying they were outside my house and going to hurt me. I added that the police were taking it very seriously since I was a minor and were currently tracing the number. The response was immediate. My phone practically exploded with messages from both numbers. Karen frantically texted that it was just a joke and begged me not to tell the police it was her. Little Karen insisted they were just playing around and admitted it was her sister who wasn't really outside my house. She included crying emojis to emphasize her distress. Karen desperately pleaded with me to tell them to stop tracing the number. She said her parents would kill her if the police showed up and swore it was just a stupid prank. I waited a few minutes, letting them stew in their panic before responding. I told them I had told the officers it was just my friend playing a prank. I mentioned they advised me to be careful about who I give my number to. Karen repeatedly thanked me and apologized, admitting what they did was really stupid. Little Karen promised they would never do anything like that again, and begged me not to be mad at them, adding a sad emoji to show her remorse. I responded that I wasn't mad but pointed out that their prank wasn't funny. I told them not to text me again, and they didn't. In fact, Little Karen couldn't even look me in the eye at school the next week. They both avoided me like the plague for the rest of the year. I never told my parents about the incident. I handled it myself and I was pretty proud of that. I probably should have told an adult, but in the moment, it felt empowering to solve my own problem. It wasn't the most dramatic confrontation ever, but for a 12-year-old with her first phone, it was a pretty big deal. And honestly, Seeing how quickly they went from threatening to begging was extremely satisfying. I've been working at the county police department for almost 7 years now. Started out doing paperwork and records and then worked my way up to the front desk reception. The benefits were solid, and I've got 2 kids to support since my ex decided child support was optional. Most days are pretty routine, people coming in to file reports, pay tickets, or occasionally bail someone out. This Tuesday started like any other until she walked in. I spotted her the moment she pushed through the glass doors. She had that walk. You know the one. Like the world was her personal red carpet. My co-worker at the desk beside me gave me a subtle eye roll. We both knew what was coming. I politely told her that there was a line and that the elderly gentleman had been waiting his turn. She responded with a huff, looking the elderly man up and down dismissively. She insisted that this was an emergency, claiming her son had been wrongfully arrested that morning and she was there to bail him out immediately. I could smell the expensive perfume wafting through the small opening in the glass. The elderly man, bless him, just shrugged and stepped back. I asked her for the name of the person she was there to bail out. She curtly replied that it was her son, Junior. I waited for more information, but that seemed to be all she thought I needed. I explained that I would need his full legal name. She sighed dramatically as if I was asking her to recite the Constitution backward. After she finally provided his full name, I typed it into the system. The charges popped up instantly: aggravated assault, possession with intent to distribute, and resisting arrest. Not his first rodeo either, according to the record. I told her that I could see his case, but unfortunately the judge had denied bail in this situation. Her perfectly penciled eyebrows shot up so fast, I thought they might fly off her face. She demanded to know what I meant by denied bail and asked if I knew who she was. She bragged that her husband was a very important businessman and that they donated to the police charity every year. I acknowledged her frustration but explained that this decision came directly from the judge, not our department. I mentioned that her son's charges were quite serious, and with his previous record, she interrupted and insisted her son was a good boy, and that the other charges were mere misunderstandings. She demanded to speak to the chief of police immediately. By this point, 2 officers, who had been dropping off paperwork, had paused nearby, watching the situation unfold. I maintained my professional tone despite wanting to bang my head against the bulletproof glass. I told her that the chief wasn't available right then, but offered to connect her with the sergeant on duty, who could explain the situation further. She refused, declaring that the situation was ridiculous and that she wouldn't leave until her son walked out of there with her. I picked up the phone to call the sergeant when she suddenly reached into her oversized purse. At first I thought she was going for her phone or maybe checkbook. Then I saw the metallic glint. A gun. She had pulled out a gun in the middle of a police station. She shouted for nobody to move and demanded her son be released right now. Everything after that happened in a blur. The officers instantly drew their weapons. 3 more rushed in from the back offices, guns trained on her. People waiting in the lobby dove for cover. I ducked down behind my desk, heart pounding in my chest so hard I could feel it in my throat. One officer commanded her to drop the weapon immediately. Another ordered her to put the gun down and get on the ground. I peeked over the counter just enough to see what was happening. She was standing there, hand shaking, looking suddenly very small, surrounded by officers with their weapons drawn. The first officer issued a final warning, telling her to drop the weapon or they would fire. Her face crumpled. The gun clattered to the floor, and she followed, collapsing to her knees. She cried out that she just wanted her son, claiming he was all she had. The officers moved in swiftly, securing the weapon and cuffing her as she sobbed hysterically. When they led her away, I heard her still yelling about her good boy and how this was all a mistake. The sergeant came to check on me afterward. The sergeant asked if I was okay, commenting on how intense the situation had been. I responded that I was fine, sarcastically suggesting it was just another Tuesday. We both knew it wasn't. In my 7 years, I'd seen people get angry, cry, even throw things. But pulling a gun in a police station, that was a new level of entitled insanity. Later, I found out she was charged with multiple felonies, including aggravated assault, brandishing a firearm, and attempting to interfere with police operations. Her son remained in custody, and now she was joining him. Turns out her husband wasn't actually that important either. He owned a small landscaping business and was already on probation himself for tax evasion. At least now she'll have plenty of time to think about it from her cell. This happened about 2 months ago during what should have been a routine grocery run. For context, I had just finished a grueling week at my accounting job. Tax season was hitting its peak, and I've been pulling 12-hour days trying to help clients get their paperwork in order. After an hour of zombie walking through the aisles and filling my cart with enough food to hopefully last the week, I finally made it through the checkout. The store was packed, as you'd expect on a weekend, and I was beyond ready to get home, collapse on my couch, and maybe order a pizza despite having just bought groceries. I wheeled my cart to my car in the far corner of the parking lot. I always park far away to avoid door dings, and started loading the bags into my trunk. I was maybe 10 steps away from my car when I heard the click-clack of heels rapidly approaching from behind. Suddenly, a woman in her mid-50s appeared beside me. Without even making eye contact, she shoved her fully loaded cart in my direction. The woman sweetly ordered me to take her cart back into the store with all the other carts I was supposedly collecting, calling me darling in the process. The cart slammed into me and I barely managed to catch it before it crashed into my legs. My first thought was confusion. Did I know this person? Had I somehow sleepwalked into a job as a cart attendant? I looked down at my outfit, faded jeans and an old band t-shirt, nothing remotely resembling a store uniform. Meanwhile, this woman was already walking away, fishing car keys out of her purse. She hadn't even bothered to wait for my response, clearly assuming I would comply with her demand. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion, the heat, or just the sheer entitlement of this stranger, but I decided this wasn't going to slide. I grabbed both carts, mine and hers, and followed her to her gleaming luxury SUV that was parked in a spot marked reserved for expectant mothers. She was definitely not pregnant. When she was opening her driver's side door, I positioned her cart directly behind her vehicle, blocking her exit path. I told her that I didn't work at the store. The look on her face was insane. First confusion, then embarrassment, quickly replaced by indignation. She asked me what I thought I was doing. I explained that I was simply returning her cart to its owner, since I wasn't an employee but just another shopper trying to return my own cart. She tried to defend herself by claiming that I looked like I worked there. I questioned what exactly made her think that, pointing out my obvious lack of uniform and asking if she just assumed anyone returning a cart must be staff. By now, a small audience had gathered, including an actual cart attendant who was watching with barely concealed amusement. The woman got angry and told me not to talk to her that way. She bragged about spending thousands at the store monthly and threatened to report me to the manager. I sarcastically suggested that was a great idea and that while she was at it, she could ask them to explain the concept of the cart return area to her, pointing out the metal rack designed specifically for customers to return their own carts. She reached for her cart, but I had positioned it just far enough away that she'd need to walk around her car to get it. She complained that the situation was ridiculous and that she was in a hurry. I replied that I had also been in a hurry before having to deal with this situation, commenting on the irony. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving her to deal with her cart. As I drove past, I could see her struggling to maneuver it around her vehicle while simultaneously trying to maintain her dignity. The cart attendant had conveniently found something to do in a completely different section of the parking lot. The petty satisfaction I felt driving away lasted far longer than it probably should have. I've worked in apartment maintenance for almost 8 years now. In my case, that person was the guy in apartment 12B. From the day he moved in 6 months ago, he's been nothing but trouble. The real breaking point came last Tuesday. I was fixing a leaky sink in the apartment below his when my work phone rang. It was 12B demanding I come to his apartment immediately because his shower was making a strange noise. When I explained I was in the middle of an emergency repair, and could come by in about an hour, he responded arrogantly. He reminded me how much he paid for his apartment, called my delay unacceptable, and claimed he paid my salary. He insisted I be there in 5 minutes before hanging up abruptly. I finished the leak repair, which was actually serious and could have caused water damage if left unfixed, then headed to his apartment about an hour later. When I knocked on his door, he yanked it open with a scowl. He immediately complained that I was late and told me the noise had already stopped, but insisted I check it anyway. He also added that I needed to fix his squeaking closet door while I was there. I bit my tongue and did my job. The shower was fine, probably just normal pipe sounds, and the closet door just needed a bit of lubricant on the hinges. Simple 5-minute fixes, but the whole time he stood over my shoulder, making snide comments about how slow I was working. When I was packing up my tools, he dropped another bomb on me. When I explained that I didn't handle parking assignments and he would need to speak with the property manager, he dismissed my explanation. He told me that wasn't his problem, I should just fix it. He bragged about his expensive brand new BMW, saying it was too valuable to park far away and was probably worth more than I made in 2 years. I explained again that I couldn't reassign parking spaces, but he just waved me off dismissively. I left feeling completely disrespected, but what could I do? It was my job. The next day I was walking through the parking lot on my lunch break when I noticed a homeless man sitting on the curb near our dumpsters. I've always tried to help folks down on their luck when I can, so I approached him and offered him half of my sandwich. We got to talking and he told me his name, though I won't share it here, and a bit about how he ended up on the streets after losing his job during the pandemic. He seemed like a decent guy who'd had some tough breaks. I told him I'd bring him some more food tomorrow and he thanked me profusely. Somehow he'd gotten his way, despite the fact that space was supposed to be reserved for a resident with mobility issues. That's when I had my moment of weakness. I mentioned to the homeless man that the owner of that BMW was a real piece of work who treated service workers like garbage. I commented that the guy thought his car was more important than people. The homeless man just nodded and responded philosophically that God has a way of balancing things out. I went back to work and didn't think much more about it. The next morning I was doing my usual rounds when I heard shouting from the parking lot. I rushed over to find 12B standing beside his BMW, red-faced and screaming. The passenger side window was completely shattered. When he saw me, he immediately accused me of vandalizing his car. I denied any involvement, truthfully stating I was at home the night before. He continued ranting that someone would pay for the damage and asked rhetorically if I knew how much it costs to replace a car window on a BMW. I just shrugged and walked away, but inside I had a suspicion about what had happened. I casually asked if he knew anything about a broken car window. He responded cryptically with a slight smile, saying the universe works in mysterious ways. I didn't press further. Part of me felt guilty, but a bigger part felt like justice had been served. The next few days were surprisingly peaceful. Apparently, BMWs don't use ordinary glass. I smiled at the sight. However, I realized I hadn't seen the homeless man for several days. I brought some clothes and more food for him, but he was nowhere to be found. I checked around the complex, behind the stores in our neighborhood, and other places where homeless people sometimes gather, but he had vanished. Part of me worries about him, but another part wonders if he moved on after completing his mission of balancing. I still keep an eye out for him, carrying extra food just in case. And whenever I see 12B's covered BMW in the parking lot, I feel very satisfied. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.